we have to be creative. We have to come up with new ways that not everybody is doing to be found and to share our brand and share who we are and our values and the value that we bring to a client or a potential client.
Well, very excited for the podcast today. Welcome, Alyssa.
Hi, Brad. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, very excited to have you on. So Alyssa Abbott is the owner and founder of Olive and Vine Socials. And we had the, fortunate opportunity to connect when you were here in Phoenix for the Curious Builder event.
Yeah, that was so fun. I was really excited to be able to be there and get to experience the collective in person. It was everything I wanted it to be from kind of knowing it on the outside and seeing it through the Curious Builder and all of that. So I thought it was a great event and a really cool location.
Yeah, it was. So in all of your time in working and knowing Mark, it's the first time he's invited you to one of his events?
No, I got the chance. So, obviously working remotely, and I'm not like an event, not on like his team in that way. And so, yeah, we just had the opportunity. They needed some photo, video stuff. And so my husband does that full time and kind of worked out like a little mini sponsorship to be able to come out there and get to be a part of it. But back in, it was October, I got to go out to All Inc. brought all of the collectives from the Minneapolis group to Chicago. And so I got to come out to that as well and hang out for, I think it was like 2 nights and meet all the builders and designers and architects too. And yeah, and then of course explore some of the really cool appliances out at I think it's the Makers Mart. Something like that.
Well, that's incredible. Yeah, it's neat. For anyone listening that's not familiar with it, Mark in Minnesota started the Curious Builder Collective. And, for a lot of builders, they don't have access to their community in the sense of, yes, we have social media, we have ways to connect, but not everyone's in a Builder 20. Not everyone's in a mastermind, and so it's a way where locally you can meet and kind of work through, strategies, issues, marketing, different aspects of the business that we're all trying to figure out, because something that's really tough as a builder is you understand maybe how to build a home or the process or the schedule, but then running the business is a completely different strategy, and running your marketing is way different. That's why we have you on today, Alyssa. And so he started these in Minneapolis. He reached out to me. We did our first year here in Phoenix, so we had 4, we did 1 a quarter. And we've had roughly 30 builders attend. It's been a great turnout. I know you got to come, and that's when we met Alyssa. I know we've connected in the past, but first time in person. And Garaza, who we do a lot with from the garage, they make these high-end garages for all of our clients. It's pretty amazing. So it was a great venue to have you down for.
Yeah, no, I'm walking into that venue was just like, where am I? This is the coolest space with, kind of that initial room that you walk into with the guitars, and then going into their garage space and seeing all the things that they do. It was just like, I know my husband was he was like conspiring how he could upgrade our garage.
Yeah. It tends to do that. I feel like I was sold to upgrade my garage, being there, and I've been there many times. I'm like, here we go again. He's like, Brad, we can do this custom floor, that says AFT on it. I'm like, oh, that's enticing. Maybe we'll have to talk about that.
Like, yes, I will do that.
So listen, it's funny to have these conversations now as opposed to, when I started 20 years ago. And, even when I was, as a teenager in high school working in construction, everything's changed. Small businesses changed, marketing strategies. Here in 2025, we're going into 2026. What do you see? Where should, there's so much that stresses business owners out. And this is not just contractors, right? This is everybody, interior design, architecture, small business. Where do you see that your clients should be focusing their energy, whatever it may be, from a marketing strategy?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is visibility. It's so hard in this world, this online world that we live in, from like, whether it's just Google or Instagram, how do I get seen? How do I get found? And now AI, using ChatGPT and how that's changing visibility. When I started years ago, I don't necessarily think I saw it from that angle. I got into the blogging and Pinterest marketing and email marketing kind of came a little bit later, but I saw that those were kind of untapped opportunities that a lot of builders weren't using. And I kind of dove into it and started testing it out with a couple people. Mark let me kind of experiment on him a little bit. And, we saw a lot of success in bringing up, his ranking on Google and then on ChatGPT and all of that. And so I think it's we have to be creative. We have to come up with new ways that not everybody is doing to be found and to share our brand and share who we are and our values and the value that we bring to a client or a potential client. And so, yeah, I think kind of from my angle, that blogging, Pinterest, email marketing, kind of creating that funnel is a little bit of a different way that maybe not every business owner is utilizing. Yeah.
It's interesting, Alyssa, because I look back and there are a lot of successful companies I know now that start out blogging. And that was a really big thing, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, early 2000s, mid 2000s,
Yeah.
early 2010, it became, and as you think about that, are you seeing businesses now still finding success through blogging, or how is that blogging background of yours influence maybe storytelling now, with the brand you're working with?
I think blogging is still incredibly valuable because while, maybe someone's not coming onto the AFT website to catch up on, the weekly blog, it's not necessarily, maybe you could do that with an email, but it's more opportunities for you to, number one, rank on Google, because Google is going to recognize that your website is current, it's being updated often. The content that you're putting out there is relevant and useful and helpful. So on one edge of the sword, there's that SEO that you're building, that foundation of this evergreen content that you're going to bring people to as they're searching for specific keywords. On the flip side, it becomes this library of answers and this, long form content that people can come to build trust, to nurture people who are researching. They're going to be looking you up before they, inquire. Typically, maybe you have a referral and they're like, okay, I trust, this person I work with, but I'm going to look into them a little bit more, and they can really get to know you and your brand and your values through, the content that you have in a blog is a really great way to do that. And so, we've used it, obviously for both sides of that coin, to be able to nurture, but then also to be visible online on all the platforms.
I love that you made a comment. You said it's a library of content, right? And you think about how that ties into SEO, and it's really, as you mentioned, visibility. That's kind of your first thing. Is like there's this competition to be visible, right? To get your information out there. How the challenge I see now, and how does someone create a voice, right? It takes time to write. It takes time to blog. The easy answer is you have ChatGPT, but now you have AI involved. Is that really your voice? Do you get penalized for that? How have you seen ChatGPT maybe hurt someone who's trying to use AI into blogging to create, quick content to get out there?
Yeah. I think ChatGPT is a great tool. And I use it in my business, not necessarily to write, but we use it, to research and to, kind of build out strategies and work through things. If you're a small business owner and you want to utilize blogging and get the benefit out of it, ChatGPT is an option. There are lots of writing AI platforms that, can help you rank. I think there is something to that, the realness of a real person. We're all kind of starting to feel that in this AI world that we're just been forced into these last couple years. And so when you go on Instagram, you kind of have an idea that that's this was AI generated. And I think the same goes for your blogs. So again, it depends on the kind of company that you are. If you can afford in your marketing budget to build out a strategy with some of these different tools, I think that is obviously what you should do, because it's going to really take you farther than AI. AI isn't perfect. It makes mistakes. It doesn't necessarily catch all the things, it's just pulling from the internet. And so, I say on some, yeah, it's fine to use. I think it's good. I don't, we still are kind of seeing, been a lot back and forth with Google, whether they're going to penalize or not penalize. It's okay. It's not okay. As far as content goes, I think it's a good tool. But if you can incorporate who you are and your brand voice into it, then that is going to stretch a little bit further and again, nurture someone in a way where they're like, oh, I see all those M dashes there. I can tell like this is this feels a little canned.
There's all these
Yeah,
emojis and
there's value
dashes
to
there.
that. I know. You're like, I can see that. I feel bad for like my on my team. I have a copywriter, and she genuinely loves like using M dashes, and she can't anymore because it feels like AI, and she's just like,
Yeah.
darn ChatGPT. But I mean, we want things to come off and feel real for the client.
Yeah. And you mentioned that, like, you have to really define your brand voice.
Yes.
What common mistakes do you see businesses making when they're trying to establish their voice?
Oh, I mean, a lot of the times when I come to work with somebody, I feel like people either have a very established voice, like maybe they're, like Mark, he's a big character. He's kind of got a specific voice, got the dad jokes and kind of the fun, like humor.
Yeah.
And then there are some that just kind of are like a little more corporate, a little bit more, maybe not as detailed in the brand voice. I definitely think having that like little bit of character is a huge benefit because again, like there are so many companies when it comes to getting visibility, one stands out a little bit more than the other. And so, you can have, a very professional sounding, but is that going to be as memorable as, someone who has a little bit of a flair? I think that's always so much fun when we get to work with a client that has a very specific kind of personality. It's a challenge. Sometimes it's hard to really match it, but, we work really hard in the beginning of, working with people to match that. And so, yeah, I think just being genuine, making mistakes. I don't know, just being a real person, and not being a robot is definitely beneficial when it comes to establishing a voice.
I agree. I mean, there's something to the authenticity, right?
Yeah.
I think I've said this on the podcast before. There was this very successful social media expert. She's in the medical field. She's out of Texas. And, she, her words, not mine, but she said, as a female, I felt that every time I got on camera, I felt that I had be ready for the day, have makeup on, be very presentable. And what I realized was that, yeah, there are times where I may be in that, ready for the day, ready for work, but there's the reality of life. Like I'm in the morning dealing with kids, dealing with work, late nights. This is when I have time to get caught up on social. And she says, I started becoming, in her words, more authentic, that she wasn't so much worried about how she was presenting herself individually. It was more, like you said, it was the authentic voice and the information she was, and she saw it skyrocket, that a lot of people related to her. And, I think, social media hurts us in some ways where everyone's kind of putting out their best, everything's great, everything's grand. But the reality is, there is a fine line to saying, okay, well, and I'll relate this to my business, is mistakes are happening every day. We have issues every day on our projects. Like, do I want to broadcast all that? Maybe not, because, you don't want to lose confidence in your client, but it's construction. It is tough. And there's a fine line. But at the core of it, what we're talking about is the brand of the company or the person should be very authentic and whatever that means, and not try to be something you're not, because people relate to someone that they feel they connect with.
Absolutely. I think authenticity shines these days. Because yeah, we live in this Instagram world where everybody is, presentable, and you see, beautiful homes, and, everyone, when they set up their little camera, it's a great background. And I get it. I am guilty of not wanting to do something on social media or take B-roll because I'm in a messy office or whatever, or the kids are running around, or I haven't done my makeup or hair. I think probably everyone can relate to that on some level. But yeah, I mean, there's just an authenticity to being real and sharing, why you do what you do. And, you guys have an incredible reputation and you guys work so hard. But, you've built that up and you've shared a lot of that journey over the years, over at AFT through, all the things that you guys have put out there online. And, it builds trust. It builds trust in who you're about to, work with. And so I just, authenticity is so much better than like perfection, I think.
Yeah, I love that. I love the trust, and authenticity is better than perfection. What advice do you give? Because I think one of the difficult things is you bring a Mark. I'm pretty comfortable in front of the camera now. I wasn't when I started, but I am now. I think practice like anyone, and I'm okay with that role. But there's a lot of business owners I meet that aren't, and they don't want to be, or maybe they want to be pulled a little bit away from the brand on an individual basis, and they don't want to become the brand. What advice do you give to business owners that maybe don't so much want their personal, life or, themselves being on camera, but they may have a company that they're producing, or a company, core values and things they're trying to get out there? What advice do you give to those that maybe aren't comfortable being on camera?
Yeah, I mean, I get that too. I think, when it comes to, social media, Instagram, there's a lot of no face content that you can create. You don't have to have those staged videos, or I know like your team, you guys have different people that, so it's not always you on the camera on every single reel on Instagram, but you have other people in your team. And I think there's value to that too. We'll do blogs where we're introducing the team, because I think that as someone is researching and interested in working with a company, they want to see who they're working with. And so on some level, that's nice for the owner to be able to give a little bit of, something to their team, and to give them some responsibility and give them some star time on the screen or on, a blog. But also, there's so much content that you can create that your face doesn't need to be in. Whether it's information about your process or some of the different builds that you've done or projects that you've created. There's thousands and thousands of things that you can do while you're still showing up online, showing up, in blogging and email and Pinterest, social media, that you can put out without that. So I don't think that's a deal breaker at all. I think, there's just different opportunities, and, connecting with a team, whether it's a social media or someone like us where we're creating content, we can kind of help build that out. But yeah, you don't have to be front and center to get started or to get content out there.
From your perspective as you're working, are there certain platforms on social media that are better for certain businesses?
Ooh. Instagram, I feel like it's a good nurturing platform. I have found I kind of geek out about Pinterest, because it is something I don't think, I find I'll work with a lot of guys, a lot of male builders that they're like, Pinterest, maybe have never even opened Pinterest. And I think Pinterest is a fantastic platform for builders, designers, even architects, because that's where people are searching for inspiration. I've had clients get inquiries from Pinterest, because we target, you can target location in Pinterest. So Pinterest, I think it's like the third search engine. I lost the word. Search engine, third highest search engine. And it's definitely something that drives long-term traffic. And so what it's doing is, you can showcase your work. You can optimize it for SEO. And so when you're putting, I don't know, the anatomy of a pin, perhaps you have an image, you have a title and a description. And in that you can communicate, a lot about you and your brand. And people search those, and it comes up exactly, it comes up based on what you have put in your pin. And so, if you're in Scottsdale, Arizona, you can put Scottsdale, Arizona within that context. and still find people. Along with that, you can use it for your clients and show them what you can do as they're building out, inspiration. If you're a designer, I know a lot of people will do that too. So that one I feel like is just kind of like it's not one that a lot of people think of until they think of it. And I know, I know a lot of builders that do use it now and have found success there.
So if I don't know much about Pinterest and I'm
Yeah.
listening to this and you're saying, okay, Pinterest is a great value, what are some of the benefits behind the scenes? And maybe how this can relate is like,
Yeah.
for example, Instagram. Now, Instagram, there's a lot of people on Instagram, a lot of users, but the problem, like if you go like one of my posts, Alyssa, that's great. Vanity metric, I get another like, maybe another follower potentially, but how does that ripple effect take place? Not really sure. How is that different for Pinterest? If you're uploading your content on Pinterest, how does that change, people being drawn to AFT?
Yeah. Pinterest is a search engine. So a lot of people kind of lump it in with Instagram. Instagram is a fantastic business tool, but it keeps people on the platform. What's really unique about Pinterest is it gets people off of the platform. So you click a pin and it takes you to their website, their blog, their freebie, your email sign up, your whatever you are wanting in your strategy, where you're wanting to send people. It takes them from what they're searching to what they're searching for. And so that is, Pinterest, not only does it do that, but it drives a lot of traffic. And so what we can get on, ranking you higher on Google and getting visibility on Google, or ChatGPT, Pinterest is just a whole other kind of side of that where you're also able to drive a lot of traffic. But what I love about it is people are searching specifically. They got on to search for what you offer. And then you're bringing them to your website and hopefully your email list and then, booking an inquiry and all of that. So yeah.
See, what's unique about that, because you're not, when you think about search engine, it's easy for us for Instagram. You can figure out Instagram, you can post content. I think it's pretty user friendly in many ways. But how many people are going into Instagram and searching Arizona custom builder, right? And is it even pulling up my image? And to your point, where you have ChatGPT as a search engine, and a lot of people have Google, and now with Pinterest out there, but people are searching images and pictures, and it directly ties your website, which is really what you're trying to take the people through, because that's going to send them to the pre-qual. Ideally, your website is matching, as you're bringing them in, how you capture them. How does that correspond? If someone's really starting ground one, should they be invested in the website first? Where does this start for them to really understand how to capture, the potential growth?
Yeah. Certainly I think you need a website. I think that's where we're going to drive people to. That's where you're going to be able to showcase your work. So having that solid foundation of like number one, I think blogging is a really good way to start kind of building that website up. You can, and honestly, you can use portfolio if you have portfolio work, put those up. I know I was listening to your episode with Caitlin Slocum, a couple weeks back, and, I know that you don't want to put everything up on your website. You want to choose choice, top projects or the projects that you're wanting to attract more of. But you can use those as opportunities. If maybe you're a newer builder and you only have a handful of projects, writing a little blurb on the top. I love when people do that because you can go and use that for Pinterest, putting a little blurb about the project, tagging and linking the different other vendors that you used. If you're a builder and you worked with a designer and an architect and, you want to highlight some of those different people, using that as a way to kind of start generating some content on your website. And then from there, blogging and writing about the experience, writing about the process, some of the things that you did. I think that's another great way to just kind of start putting some stuff out there. It doesn't hurt to get a little bit of an understanding of SEO so that the stuff that you're creating actually makes an impact. But it's certainly doable, and it's certainly something that, with a little bit of effort, not that business owners have a ton of time, but it's worth it because then it puts you on the map and it starts building authority on your website.
So when someone's reaching out to you, such as myself, like how do you onboard a new client? Like what are some of your maybe qualifications, questions, metrics, things you're looking for?
Yeah. I think it's important to have good pictures. That is huge. I've worked with people who, even if you don't have a ton of projects, but you have two, three projects with really good photos, that is something I ask pretty early on in our like initial conversation because um, I have found on Pinterest that photos with text overlay for the home industry don't typically do as good as photos with just homes. That's something, I mean, with Pinterest, it's one of those platforms. Algorithms always changing, and there's always things we're trying to figure out or adjust to, especially, AI content. And so in the home industry, having those images is so valuable. So that's a big thing. I don't need hundreds of projects. We can do with a few. I also love to see. I mean, a good website is also helpful. And so,
Mhm.
I've worked with Caitlin a bunch of times with clients upgrading their website or doing a rebrand. I love that. Um, but having those things are kind of instrumental to starting with us. Um, and the onboarding process, I like to keep it easy because you guys are so busy. There's you don't have a ton of time to just sit down and pour everything out. Usually it's just getting all of the content, getting, branding and photos and things like that and access to the different platforms we need. But yeah, I mean, I think when you're investing in someone like us, you're wanting to get that off of your plate. And
Mhm.
so that's a really big deal to me. I really, really try to make that process as easy and simple as possible. Yeah, because I mean, I don't want to invest in someone where I'm going to have to do half the work. And it's, that's just, I think
Mhm.
we've all probably been there. That's not fun.
Yeah, it's not, especially if you're
No.
pushing at your client to like get you deliverables and you mentioned photos, anything.
Yeah, yeah. I try something I mean, I've learned a lot over the last couple of years as I've been doing this. And we now like batch everything up front. And so we'll go in and do all of our keyword research and build out the blog topics that we're going to do for 6 months. I'll do questionnaires, which is, I haven't quite figured out a way to pull the information I need about a project or process without a little bit of input from the client. And so, but I get all of that to my client ahead of time. And that has been kind of a game changer because we've been able to get everything out. And then every month it's just so smooth. And so that helps a lot too.
So how have you seen your business expand over the years?
Oh, I just talked with Mark about this on his Q&A last week. We started really, really strong. I felt like we kind of exploded. At one point, I think I had 10 clients, which for me
Yeah.
and I think at that time I only had my copywriter and I was, that's like 20 blogs and Pinterest and there, I mean, there was just, it was madness. And this year has been a year of growth in a way that my business has just really been refined. And so I don't have as many clients right now, but I have a really strong team. It's just kind of worked out. Like it just kind of the right people came into the right place. I lost like a VA employee that I had that I loved, but it just wasn't the right fit. And so there was a lot of like there was a lot of growth, a lot of growing pains this year
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
I was not necessarily expecting as we walked into the year. But man, I wouldn't change it because we have a really strong team now. And I mean, teams are everything. The people that you work with, um, that's been something, I mean, I knew that innately, but actually being an owner and bringing on the right people and finding the right fit for my clients people who are really going to serve them. Um, it's made a really big difference. And so, yeah, I think that gives me a little more time with the kids from time to time, and
Mhm.
being able to step back on certain things and delegate certain things. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's been a year, but I'm excited for 2026 because I feel like we're in a really strong place for how we can handle more. So that's good.
I think hiring is really difficult because they're an
Mm.
extension of you. And so for me, you know, it, and I don't know how often your team is speaking with the client. It could be very often, I would imagine. Maybe you speak to that, but for us, it's at least once a week. I mean, maybe once a month in some cases, depending on how busy our clients are. But when you think about that, you have to have people that are very good. You know,
Hmm.
they can be firm in some ways. They can, but more importantly, be very approachable and understanding, and the client likes them. And there's always a fine balance to the teams I'm putting out there working with each client. How have you found success? Because I would imagine that your team's working with your clients very interactively, pretty regularly, and so hiring can be really tough.
I can. I probably a question I should ask you. Maybe you can tell me more about what's been your biggest hiring lesson learned over the years that you've been running your business.
That's a good question. I realize I'm not good at it.
Do
It's
you
funny.
give it
Like,
to someone else?
yeah, it's funny. I think over my career, like there's definitely been some good hires I had. There was definitely some terrible ones. I think I feel like I'm pretty good at reading people, but even if you read people, um, having them perform on a day to day is a little bit different, right? And so where I'm going is, over the years we've really found value in, spending time in company culture and systems and operations because we really have to have a good landing pad for them to come in, or else it's not going to be successful no matter how talented they are or how good they are. But I think to answer that, I've realized that I have some better people that do a better job of vetting, potential hires. Really good job. And those are the ones that are not typically, the ones that are, going through that first, second, even third round of interviews. Hire slow, fire fast is kind of the motto of very
Hmm.
successful firms. And not that you just hire someone to fire them, but point being is they really have to get up to speed quick. And, everyone has that probation period. But I found that that's just one of those things that is not my strong suit. And so you just have to understand what your strong suit is and what it isn't.
Yeah. No, I that was a lesson I think I learned this year. I'm a very optimistic person. I
Mm-hmm.
am like, yeah, you're perfect. And there have been times where no, 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 no. There's also been times where, I've been like just so wanting the help. And I heard that the hire slow, fire fast. I don't remember where in a podcast or something. I know it's a term. And I remember thinking that at one point this year, it was just like I had to let go of someone, and that's just not my temperament is just positive, and oh
Mm-hmm.
my goodness, that was
The
awful.
worst part of owning a business.
No, I was like I never. It made me really cautious as I have hired people because I never want to do that ever again. I
Mm-hmm.
know that's part of it, but yeah, that was hard. And so another lesson that I've learned, the person that I mentioned earlier, she was fantastic, but I had her doing everything. Like she was a literal extension of me. She was doing all of our Pinterest clients. She was and managing all of kind of the different things that we had there. She was managing blogs. She was helping with everything in between. And I mean, she was burnt out. I was burnt out. She wanted to do other things. It all kind of just came to a head. And as I took a step back, um, I remember thinking like, I didn't really want to separate the two and have someone just do Pinterest and just do blogging as far as like helping me with all of it. But it made so much more sense when I got out and started looking for the right people and putting that out there. So now I have the person who does my blogging management. She kind of helps me organize and make sure we've got everything that we need to get a blog from start to finish. She is a blogger. Like she runs her own blog. She knows the process. It was a lot easier to onboard her. I didn't have to teach her everything. And then same with girl that does all my Pinterest management. She helps. She's a mom and loves doing it. And, just it's a perfect fit. Like she just, instead of trying to kind of fit someone into my puzzle, I went out and got a better puzzle. I don't know what I'm trying to say there, but you know what I mean? Like it was just trying to find somebody and make them fit. And, I just had to kind of give up what my initial thought was and take some ideas out of the box. And I was really thankful again for where we're at now, because I have people in place they are specialists in that specific thing that they do. And yeah.
It's so hard. I'm telling you, maybe it's something with our, I don't want to say you and I have a character flaw, but maybe optimism we realize is not a good
to a fault.
Yeah, to a fault. Maybe that's not the best when you're hiring someone, because and I think there's a fine line there, because my experience of good leaders is seeing people not as they are, but how they can become, right? And there's definitely a sense of optimism there, of understanding. Sometimes we as individuals don't. Maybe we may feel that, but we don't see that in ourselves. Maybe there's an imposter syndrome. There's other things that are inhibiting us from getting to the next level. And sometimes some of us may have had a coach or a leader or a mentor that saw something in us that kind of gets the best out of us. And, there has to be a sense of optimism for that. But at the same time, it can be detrimental, as you mentioned, when you're going through that interval process and you're like, they're going to be perfect. And they come on, you're like, oh, this is not going great.
Yeah. I relate to that.
So when you're working with a client, and you kind of alluded to this, ideally for you, as you're vetting them, they're going to have some great photos, right? They're going to have some great content. How does that strategy look when you're trying to create 30 days of content? And if someone maybe doesn't have a lot, you already mentioned quality over quantity is very important. Good quality photos, even if you don't have a ton of projects, but you have some good photos. What does that look like when you're going through a month of strategy? I can only imagine it will vary depending on, the client and how much content they have. But, how do you strategize that month if maybe they're just starting out, they don't have a ton of content, and so you're trying to pick target areas for them?
Yeah. I mean, that first month that we work with a client is all about strategy. And so we are diving in to what they're wanting to target. Maybe they're really wanting to get business in a new area. They're wanting to grow a little bit, or just get business in the area they're in. And so location is huge. We'll do a lot of research there. We'll do some competitor research, see what other people are doing, who's showing up where there's opportunity, where things aren't being, maybe there's keywords that we can kind of discover through that process. And so we'll build out that strategy that first month, and kind of, I'll present it to them and say, this is what I see. We'll build out that first 6 months of content, of blog ideas, based on that research, and really present that and show them, okay, here's what we can do. Here's, the blog ideas that we have and why they're going to be beneficial to start with. I like starting, if someone has absolutely no blog content, they've never blogged, I like building out a foundation. And I really, I'm thinking like, what is a homeowner who's researching this company? What are they going to be asking? What are questions? And I'll ask that, like, what are questions that you're getting often? Because those are blogs that we can write, that we can answer and help kind of build trust with people. They see that their questions are being answered before, they even speak to the builder. And a lot of it is just kind of building out that foundation of who they are, their process, showcasing some of their builds. We can talk about their team, if it's a small team or a big deal, whatever it is. And so we really start with that. And then everything else kind of comes in the funnel after that. So Pinterest, after blogging starts, then we can, start building out that Pinterest. I mean, we'll have the strategy essentially, but, start putting together all of our pins and driving traffic to those blogs. And, maybe you've got a freebie that you have built out and you want to expand your email. That's something newer that I started last year. And I think email is something that I noticed a lot of people weren't really utilizing. They were bringing people to their website. We were able to drive traffic, but then what? And so bringing them in a little bit more and kind of having that additional touch was beneficial. So what do you guys do? I'm not on your email list. I should be. Do you guys do email marketing? Have you noticed
It's funny you say that.
anything
That is
with that?
definitely a goal. There's somewhere out there in one of my goals to do. You know,
There you go.
yeah, I touched on this. Like, there's so much for like business owners to pursue,
Oh my goodness.
but
Yeah.
there's certain things that are very valuable, like email marketing. And one thing we have never taken advantage of is our email list and getting out there. What would you recommend if it's a builder? Again, not that you have to give me some game plan now, but what would be maybe a sample of content if you're working with a builder like myself or others out there? Would this be a quarterly thing, a monthly thing? What are things you're advertising, project updates? And where I'm going is one thing that's maybe a little bit difficult for me is currently all of our projects are build to suit. So client hires us, we're building a project. These are not homes for sale. They're not homes for public
Yeah.
consumption. Fortunately, a lot of our clients let us put content out there, but they're their private residences that they're building for them. What
Yeah.
would you recommend, or what strategies do you see someone like me, whether it be repetition or content that they're putting out there, to hopefully have someone actually look at the email and not just go delete?
Yeah, I mean, email. There's a lot of. I mean, there's a lot of testing. What I've done with clients, I have people who do one email a month, and they'll showcase, work that they're doing. I have other clients who, are a lot more often, where we'll do a once a week, and I think, for someone like you guys, there's something to just being visible. Again, going back to showing up in someone's inbox, even twice a month. I mean, I feel like twice a month is fantastic. Once a month is great. Where you're just kind of popping in. I mean, if someone's following you, they want to see what you're up to. They're interested. You've got content on YouTube that you could share. You can highlight what's going on with the current build, if you have the permission to do so. People follow that kind of content on Instagram, even showing that, going back and saying like, are you following us on Instagram? If you want to see more day to day. I think it's just really bringing people in. And certainly it's also a really great place where we can position the call to action and, encourage people, tell people about, what availability you have, because oftentimes, someone who I know, even for my business, I'll go back and look and see someone join my email list, maybe a year ago, and then they reached out to me maybe 6 months later after kind of following me for a time. And it's just, I think, part of that funnel where it might not be instant. I don't assume that it would be, but also it's just that constant little touch, like, hey, we're here. This is what we're up to. We are, showcasing the value that you bring to the people that you are working with, and maybe enticing a little bit of FOMO. You want to be like this person who's working with us, and just continually showing up. Even if you're not strong on Instagram, I think email and having that list of people, that captive audience of people who are there on purpose, that is valuable. And so, while you're not maybe selling digital products that are maybe great to sell on email, and maybe some of the different brands, I know builders oftentimes will have a podcast, and we'll have things that they could sell. That's a great option.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it's a great way to show up in a way that's you have full control over, which I think is a really cool thing for someone to utilize.
It's fascinating as you kind of were speaking about this, whether it be the podcast you mentioned or maybe other things you're doing to like promote that in a way. And, you're kind of hitting a target base of people that already believe in you and your product, and that's why they hired you. And so it's taking advantage. It's funny because, we just had not too long ago Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And I think every single place I've ever gone that got my email found it and hit me with something. It was unbelievable the amount of emails that was hit my account. but you could see how targeted, how valuable that is to those, those companies, even though a lot of them are retail, but they're saying, hey, we're taking advantage of this. And it's a way to get information out there, that's pretty easy.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I mean, it's the opportunity to, again, that visibility, that someone who has given you their email address, typically in the experience that they would have with, with a builder or a designer, they went to their website, they got their freebie, or they signed up for their email list. They genuinely wanted information about your company. And so why wouldn't you take advantage of that? I mean, that's just such a valuable way to communicate with the people who are interested in you. And you don't have to have some long email. It can be short. It can just even be personable. I think about, now that I do this, I think about the emails that I open. And, there are people who like literally will write, a little, like something about their week, a little story, like, or something that's happening. And then, they share their offers and different things towards the end of the email. And I find myself reading those. And so it's, I'm genuinely interested in this person and their company and their brand. And so while, you might get people who do just delete the email or archive it or wherever that goes. I think it's valuable. And obviously, I mean, the stats on email are incredible. The ROI, I think, is like 36-1. Like, it's just that you
Wow.
can get
Wow. That's high.
a lot of people. Yeah, it's valuable because you're speaking to your target audience.
That's incredible. That's,
There you go. You
yeah.
should do some email marketing.
Well, now we're gonna have to do. Now we're gonna have to do that. I think that's actually really smart. What are all the services that you offer, Alyssa?
Yeah, so I offer blogging, Pinterest marketing, email marketing, and then I do offer some SEO. We'll do like SEO audits and some location pages. So just some SEO services that are going to be helpful for people as we're getting started.
Do people tend to hire you for all the above, or do they have the option to come in like a la carte?
Yeah, I built many custom packages over the years. I think my and Instagram. I did just start kind of doing some Instagram kind of repurposing. So since we're already creating a lot of content, I'm certainly, if you do all of them, that's kind of the best deal because we're in our groove. And so I think doing a little bit of everything is fantastic. We offer, everything from 1 to 2 blogs a month. We'll do full Pinterest marketing, which is going to, I mean, I think most of my clients we're doing anywhere from like 120 to 160 pins going out every month. Emails, and then our Pinterest, Instagram repurposing, where we're taking content from the blog, we're taking content from Pinterest to kind of repurposing that. Really, that's for someone who wants to show up on Instagram, and they're not necessarily wanting to create reels or pay for like a huge, social media company to do everything for them. That's a really great way to still show up and point people to their website and kind of keep in line with the strategy that we're building. And yeah, I mean, I feel like at the end of the day, we don't really, we create discoverability. I really want to help people with the different services that I offer. I want to help builders be seen online, be searchable and trusted. And so all of the different things that we do, when you do all of them, I feel like it really is going to take them farther than just doing Pinterest or just doing blogging. And so again, I when I meet with somebody, I'll certainly offer what I think is going to give them the best value for what they're looking for. I never want to do a disservice and only offer something when it's not going to make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole point, right? The more value you bring,
Yeah,
build your company, your reputation, and really you're trying to help us bring value and at least advertise the value we offer.
absolutely. Yeah.
So what's your long-term vision for Olive and Vine?
Oh man. I would love, I don't know. I feel like What was that?
I was going to say it's funny because when you're interviewing for a company and they're like, "Hey, where do you want? Where do you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years?" I always thought it's like,
I don't know.
it's just kind of an awkward question, I think, in business because you're like, "Well, am I getting the job? What opportunities for growth anyway?" But I know it may be a little different for you asking that question as you're building your enterprise, but
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think I've always had dreams of really growing and turning into something where I have, a larger team of people under me. Um, my team is all remote. And so, I mean, I couldn't imagine being in a place where we're all together. That would be really fun.
oh yeah.
But, but I mean, having a team of people and kind of growing it into more of an agency would be really cool.
Hmm.
At the same time, going back to you had mentioned employees and how often I'm the one that communicates with all of my clients, my team, I've got info sheets on all the clients and their brands. And, my team knows each brand really well, but I'm the one that communicates. And I just couldn't imagine not being interacting with everybody. And that might be something down the road that I'd have to bring more people up. And I mean, I love that. I love bringing people into leadership and empowering others. And I feel like that would be just a really cool thing down the road. So we'll have to see what happens. But if I get really good at hiring, then we'll be smooth sailing.
If I
But
get
yeah,
really
no,
good
I
at
mean,
hiring,
we'll see. No, I feel like like I said, this year we've done a lot of really cool things, and I've brought on some amazing people, and so that excites me, and it gives me just a really good outlook on growth for next year, and steps to becoming something like an agency. So
Mhm.
that's that's the goal, while still feeling intentional. All of my clients know me, we'll have good conversations, and I don't want to lose that. And I mean, I guess maybe that's a question for you and how you kind of deal with that, because you are the face of your company and people come to AFT because they want the best.
Mhm.
But how do you deal with that, with wanting to take a step? Yeah, I mean, I
Back or
guess.
like whatever it is or
Yeah,
other
yeah.
folks. I think it's
Hmm.
hard. What I've realized is, it's really hard when you're small. Like when you're a small
Yep.
firm, it's just really hard for a lot of reasons. I mean, you have to wear a lot of hats. I mean, I still find now as a small business owner, I wear a lot of hats. I don't think that changes. My hats may be different than they were before.
Hmm.
But as you can create um, good training and people and repetition, right? That's the big thing.
Yeah.
Even though we're doing homes that never been built, you try to keep repetition. It's hiring really good people that they care about the company like it's their own, and that's hard to find. But when you find people like that, it's pretty rare. And when you have that, it does allow you to step back a little bit. But it really comes down to expectations. As you get a little bit bigger, and you have a few different channels of departments or people, you can really set clear expectations with the client so that they're very familiar that, hey, look, and again, we pitch against each other. And what I mean by that, I was interviewing for a project about 6 months ago, and I kept telling the client, I said, the advantage of hiring us is that I'm not on your job every day. And the benefit is you actually have a company and system and organization running your project. So if something happens to me or your superintendent or someone on the job, like we can know what has to be done, who's under contract, like we don't really miss a beat. Whereas other builders totally selling like, hey, it's me, I bags on, I'm in the field every day, you're
Yeah.
done with me. And really what I've seen is it comes down to preference. And some clients will say, I want the owner of the company on my job site. I want to talk to him every day. And my ideal client is the one that has built companies and they're successful. And they're like, we have teams and they're entrepreneurs typically at heart, and they've built teams and operations and they want the operation. And so you have to understand how your business is built. And as you have to market to the ideal client that actually aligns with the way you run your business. And then from
Yeah.
there, if you're trying not to be, you may be the face of the company on social media, but not face, on a daily basis, then you have to make sure that the expectations, communication, and things set up so the client understands that and they don't feel that they were deceived.
Yeah. No,
It's
definitely.
tough.
And that's what I aspire to that.
So what keeps you up
I'm
at
I'm
night?
looking forward to it. Oh man. Um Probably my kids. My kids. They do. I have a 1-year-old. She keeps me up at night, quite literally.
Oh, for sure.
Um No, I mean, I think so much of being an entrepreneur is is just like wanting to be the best. Like I want to be the absolute best for my clients. I want to grow. And I mean, I definitely have those nights where I'm thinking about those things and not having enough time to do all of those things. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm excited for the future, but I think, as entrepreneurs, I think we all probably kind of know that in that, there's so much to do and not enough time to do it all in. So
Oh,
I,
if you have the secret to more time, please let me know.
oh man, I'd be really rich if I had the secret to time. I'd love to have more time, but I'm thankful for the time that I have, and I'm blessed in the way that I get to be home with my kids. I mean, that's initially why I started my business in the first place. Was I quit corporate America and started something small that grew, and man, I'm so thankful for that. So I get to do a little bit of both, which is fun.
That's amazing. What do you do for fun?
Yeah. Um, we like to travel. We actually just came back from Monterey a couple
Beautiful.
days ago. Yes, it was actually really sunny and beautiful out there. So, yeah, I have three little ones and my husband, and so we do travel quite a bit. So we're gonna go to Disneyland in a couple weeks, just right after Christmas. Oh, yeah, we were talking about that.
Fun. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see with my 1 year old how she
Yeah.
does, but it'll be fun.
Yeah. Nap time in the stroller around the park. It's always an
We're just
adventure.
gonna have no expectations and just take it slow, and it'll be a blast. I think it'll be fun. I have a 4 year old and a 6 year old, so they
Fun.
that's
Fun
it's the
ages.
magical time to go.
It's the best time to go to Disneyland at that age. They love it. They can't get
I
enough.
know, I can't wait. That's so
Oh, it's
fun.
so fun.
Princesses and Spider-Man and all
Yeah,
of that.
exactly. So, where can our listeners find you, Alyssa?
Yeah, my website, oliveinvinesocials.com, and Instagram, same Olive and Vine Socials. Um, and yeah, I'm there. That's where you can find me, and I'm so excited to continue to work with incredible builders and designers and architects and people in the home industry. You guys just inspire me every day with the things that you create, and that's where that's what I'm here for. So I love it.
Well, thanks, Alyssa. You've been an incredible guest, and thanks for bringing all of our stuff to life.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. It was so fun chatting with you.